It doesn't look like the war in the Stranger Things fandom is going to die down anytime soon because there are some people who are coping over the ending saying, "Ooh, 11 is alive and everything is amazing and this is a 10 out of 10." And then there are other people who are saying this is the worst ending we have seen since Game of Thrones for a cultural phenomenon. And it doesn't look like that's going to stop anytime soon. And the Duffer brothers are not helping that with all of their terrible comments. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, we've been talking a lot about Stranger Things over the past couple of days because of how much it means to so many people and how important this show really was for culture. It started as a phenomenal show that lots of people loved, and over the years, we saw the MCU slopification process happen to this. They did away with the dark, brutal atmosphere and the mystery and the intrigue, and in came the bright lights, them climbing a massive mountain in just minutes in order to defeat the big baddie. And of course, them sacrificing one of their main characters in a way that did not feel satisfactory. And the Duffer brothers have not helped this situation at all whatsoever. And funny enough, they are probably going to be out of a career going forward because we know that they're going to Paramount, but one of their next shows was silently canceled. And I can't say that I feel all that bad. So these scores for Stranger Things Season 5 have not gone down at all over the past couple of days. I think because while there are a lot of people leaving negatives, there are also people leaving positives, so it's sort of balanced itself out. But either way, this is the lowest season by far, sitting at a 56%. Just goes to show that you can kill something off in just 2 episodes and disappoint millions upon millions of people. What they've been saying about this situation just shows how ridiculous they are, how out of touch they are. The Duffer brothers say that Will Byers had to come out to defeat Vecna. Ultimately, to defeat or overcome this evil, he had to get that over with. And to get over that, he needed to come out not just to his mom, but his friends. So that's why we put it there right at the end, because that's sort of important in terms of their battle and what lies ahead, which I think is ridiculous. I think that that scene was poorly acted, poorly written. The Will Byers coming out scene was actually longer than it took them to defeat Vecna, from the time that the Mind Flayer became this physical kaiju creature to him being impaled, Vecna being impaled, which is insane to think about. You have had multiple seasons leading up to this point, and the best you can do is like 6 minutes and 30 seconds. That's wild. The Duffer brothers explain where the Demogorgons, Demodogs, and Bats were during the Abyss battle. Now, a lot of people thought that this meant, oh, they just morphed into this large creature, that's why. And they said it's just that Vecna was not expecting the sneak attack on his home turf. They're there somewhere. We obviously discussed having a demo battle on top of the Mind Flayer battle, but it felt more right to us that why did he need the demos when the Mind Flayer is this giant thing and can attack them? We did at some point have that they were going to come across a giant field of demo eggs and kind of an aliens thing, but you can't get all your ideas in there. And that sounds like a way better idea than the entirety of this episode. I've gotta be honest. I would rather see a field of demo eggs and then maybe the team disturbing them and then a bunch of other demos come into the battle and it actually be intense. I think that they just ran out of budget. I think it is crazy how really low budget this entire season felt, even though they had $400 to $500 million for this one season. But we didn't get that explanation in the show, and that's the major problem. They can sit here and clarify behind the scenes all they want. If you were a better writer and just better at your job, you would put that in the show, because there are going to be a lot of people who don't look at social media, who don't see what they're saying on social media. And why is it that we need like all this added context outside of the show if you actually are talented? Well, that's because they're not talented. Also, they talked about the military, saying in that 18-month gap, I suppose there's not much else to do. You can't explore this other dimension. There's no Eleven to chase anymore because she's gone. So my guess is they just sort of slowly dismantled operations and left town. And I can't say that I feel all that bad now that we're finding out the Duffer brothers' next show has been shelved. And I believe their move to Paramount is going to be one where they do like one smaller show and that's it. They're basically just being bought up by the competition so they can't do anything else. But after the way that this series ended, I don't think that they're ever going to get a show with this much budget and that is going to be this impactful ever again. So it says ahead of the release of Stranger Things season 5 finale, Netflix quietly canceled the next show from the creators of the iconic show. The Duffer Bros, Matt and Ross, were set to work on the adaptation of Stephen King and Peter Straub's best-selling novel, The Talisman. The duo had initially inked a deal to create the show back in 2021, and it makes sense why they would have been brought onto this because it is about a kid who has to save his mom, and there's parallel worlds. It makes sense. And if this was season 1 Duffer Brothers, I would be like, hell yes, but now I really just want them to disappear the same way that Dumb and Dumber from Game of Thrones disappeared. They rushed the ending of GOT just to do a Star Wars trilogy that never actually came to fruition. And that, I think, is what's going to happen to these bros. However, the project has been languishing in production hell since. During his interview with CBR, Ross shared the disappointing update saying, Talisman is no longer at Netflix, so we're not involved. When I interned, when I was really, back in college at Kennedy Marshall, I remember reading, I think it was a movie script for Talisman. So it's been in development forever, so I'm sorry that we were not the ones to break the curse. But to top all of that off, we also know that there is a, I would say, pretty big update that hasn't been shared all that much during their discussions, and that is that they are moving away from Netflix. I think it was probably naive of us to think we could break the Talisman. The latest update comes in the wake of their move to Paramount in April of 2026. This is pretty big news, but I can't say that it really matters to a lot of people anymore. Though what does matter to people is how much they fucked up this cultural phenomenon, how disappointing their work turned out to be, and how they really didn't have any respect for the Stranger Things fan base. Now, there are definitely some people out there who thought that it ended in an amazing way and that it was solid and that they, could have done so much worse. I disagree, and a lot of other fans do too. The finale of Stranger Things genuinely pissed me off so much. Worst shit ever. 10 years of build-up so they can use the power of friendship to defeat the villain in 15 minutes. People on TikTok had better theories and writing than the Duffer brothers. Yeah, they had said previously that, you're not going to expect any of the decisions we make. You're not going to expect any of the plot decisions. And yeah, that's because it was so basic and so boring and so easily guessable that people expected more from these guys, and we did not get it. Need the Duffer brothers to STFU, never talk again and never write anything again. The more they talk, the more they prove they stole the Stranger Things script. I love when my scary mist monster conveniently becomes a comically weak fleshy kaiju so that the heroes can defeat it via literal video game logic in 5 minutes after 9 years of build-up. Yeah, it felt like a Resident Evil fight, and not in a good way. They should have kept him this mist monster, and I honestly think that Stranger Things ended during season 3, because even though season 4 had amazing moments and season 5 also had some decent ones, I just think that them defeating the Mind Flayer and, the Russian plot not being as prominent and the atmosphere of season 3 really just hit home, and I think that it's much better than what we got during the ending of season 5. Every shot from Stranger Things finale looks like this. I loved this podcast, and it's Holly and Max having this long discussion. And I know the mindset of, Vecna doesn't go in the cave, so he can't get them. Clearly, if you watch the finale, he could have gone in the cave if he really wanted to. So, yeah, I still wouldn't be dilly-dallying, that's for sure. The biggest plot hole in Stranger Things 5 was how Derek fit through that small opening, and I completely agree. Yeah, Jamie Campbell Bower delivered a amazing performance. I don't really blame him for the problems that Vecna had, but I think that Vecna was actually the worst thing that happened to the show, because as soon as Vecna really came into the picture, things started getting crazy and they were more focused on him than really progressing the main character's stories. And that's when we got like this onslaught of random side characters. And it just shows how untalented the Duffer brothers are, how untalented a lot of the actors on this show really are, people affiliated, whether they're writers or producers. And in general, it's very sad that we got to this point. So we'll see what happens if the Duffer brothers make any more ridiculous statements, or if a lot of people just say, I want to forget season 5 and I really don't want to talk about it anymore. But the sort of war in the fandom is still waging on, and I can't say I'm all that surprised by it, because I also, like many other people, am extremely disappointed, and it's just crazy that another cultural phenomenon was killed at the very end. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this important and informative, make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.